Most people think manipulation happens when someone lies, flatters, or pressures you into doing something you don't want to do. But the truth is far more subtle. Real manipulation doesn't begin with their words. It begins with your emotions. It starts the moment someone discovers what controls you: your desire to be liked, your fear of rejection, your need to prove yourself. That's when the invisible strings tighten. The Stoics understood this long before psychology had a name for it. They called it pathos, the emotional turbulence that makes a man lose control of his reason. To them, being manipulated wasn't a moral failure, it was a moment of unconsciousness, a moment when the mind stopped seeing and started reacting. Seneca once wrote, "He who is ruled by emotion lives in the hands of another." And that is the foundation of every form of manipulation, emotional dependency disguised as connection. The manipulator doesn't need to convince you. He only needs to make you feel. Once you feel, you no longer think. Once you react, he already owns you. But the Stoics found a way out, not through aggression, but through awareness. They discovered 5 psychological tactics that make you immune to manipulation. They don't involve shouting, arguing, or proving a point. They involve mastering the one battlefield most people never even see: your own mind. You see, most people believe power lies in controlling others. The Stoics believed power lies in not needing to control anyone at all. Because the man who can't be manipulated can't be ruled. He becomes his own master, untouchable not by wealth or strength, but by self-command. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That single line holds the cure to modern manipulation, because manipulation only works when your peace depends on something external: their approval, their behavior, their validation. But when your center is internal, manipulation dies before it begins. Think of a calm ocean. Storms can rage above, but deep below the water is still. The Stoic man lives from that depth. The world may provoke him, test him, deceive him, yet he remains unmoved. He sees the play but doesn't join the performance. He watches emotions rise and fall like waves, but never forgets he is not the wave, he is the ocean. Today, manipulation has evolved. It wears different masks: social media trends, emotional guilt, persuasive language, even positive advice that hides selfish intent. But the essence is ancient. It's about taking control of your perception. When someone can direct your attention, they don't need to control your body. They already control your behavior. That's why the Stoics trained their mind the way warriors trained their swords, not to attack others, but to remain undefeated within themselves. They understood that the mind, when unguarded, is the easiest fortress to breach, but once guarded by awareness, it becomes impenetrable. Let's call this the hidden war. It's not fought on battlefields or in debates. It's fought in every text you receive, every argument you enter, every compliment that feels too sweet, every guilt trip disguised as care. The war for your mind never ends because influence never sleeps. The Stoic method teaches 5 tactics that end that war by making you unreactive, unreadable, and unbreakable. You won't just resist manipulation, you'll see through it before it begins. You'll start noticing how people use emotional triggers, praise, shame, fear, to steer you. And once you see the mechanism, the illusion dies. The first step is awareness. Awareness is the opposite of reaction. The manipulator wants you to move without thinking.
11. Detachment isn't the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. You still feel disappointment, frustration, longing, but you do not obey them. You observe them, as Marcus said, as passing impressions of the mind. The manipulator wants you to forget that truth, to drown in emotion until logic disappears. Detachment keeps logic on the throne. 12. Every Stoic knew this paradox. Control comes from surrender. When you stop trying to force outcomes, you regain control over yourself. When you let go of needing others' approval, you attract genuine respect. When you detach from winning, you start acting in ways that naturally lead to victory. It's not magic, it's psychology. People sense strength in those who need nothing. 13. Detachment is the shield of the wise. It guards against emotional hijacking. It allows you to see manipulation not as an attack, but as information, revealing who you're truly dealing with. When someone tries to provoke you, they expose their weakness. When you don't react, you expose your power. 14. Think of the Stoic warrior. He enters battle prepared for death, not because he desires it, but because he has already accepted it. That acceptance makes him unstoppable. He cannot be manipulated with fear because he has already faced it. In modern life, the same principle applies. Once you accept any outcome, you move with unmatched freedom. You become unpredictable and therefore uncontrollable. 15. Seneca said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." The manipulator thrives on making you suffer before something even happens. Fear of rejection, loss, embarrassment. Detachment silences that noise. You stop suffering for things that might never occur. You stop playing their game entirely. 16. Detachment also dismantles ego. You realize not every insult requires defense. Not every loss means defeat. Not every silence needs filling. Ego is the manipulator's favorite doorway. They knock by attacking your pride. But the Stoic man doesn't flinch. He sees through the game. He knows the only victory that matters is victory over himself. 17. The manipulator says, "You don't care enough." The Stoic answers, "I care correctly." They say, "You've changed." The Stoic replies, "I've evolved." Detachment allows you to walk away from noise with grace. You owe no reaction to those who trade in chaos. Your silence is your statement. Your peace is your proof. 18. In the modern world, detachment feels like rebellion. Everyone wants you reactive. Advertisers, influencers, politicians. They feed off your outrage, envy, and insecurity. But the Stoic sees through the illusion. He knows outrage is control disguised as passion. Detachment becomes his quiet revolution, his way of saying, "I refuse to be owned." 19. When you practice detachment daily, you start noticing subtle changes, slower reactions, calmer mornings, fewer emotional spikes. You stop checking your phone obsessively. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to convince people to see your worth. Instead, you embody it. Detachment transforms presence into power. And here lies the paradox that terrifies manipulators most. The detached man is both unpredictable and unbreakable. He plays no emotional games, yet wins every one. He follows no script, yet writes his own. He doesn't control others, he controls himself. And that control is the rarest, purest form of power. Part 4. The distance. Detach from outcome. 21. Detachment begins as discipline and ends as nature. At first it feels unnatural. Your mind resists. It wants to react, defend, chase, but repetition rewires instinct. The more you practice restraint, the more peace becomes your default. One day, you realize someone tried to provoke you, and you simply didn't care. Not from arrogance, but clarity. You saw the trap and walked around it. That is progress. 22. The Stoics trained for this through mental rehearsal, a technique called premeditatio malorum, premeditation of misfortune. Before each day, they imagined the worst outcomes, betrayal, loss, failure, not to live in fear, but to free themselves from it. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself every morning, "Today I shall meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful." And by expecting it, he became unshaken by it. 23.
Part 5. The Logic Trap. Make them explain themselves. Segment 1. The manipulator thrives in chaos. They twist words, use emotion as a weapon, and create confusion so thick that you start doubting your own reason. But the Stoic knows confusion is a choice, and the moment you bring logic into the room, the illusion begins to die. The greatest weapon against manipulation isn't anger, it's reason.
calm, cold, and sharp enough to slice through deception like a blade through fog. Socrates mastered this art centuries ago. He never accused, never shouted, never imposed. He simply made people explain themselves, and in doing so, they destroyed their own arguments. That is the power of the logic trap. You don't fight the liar, you hand them the rope of their own contradictions and watch as they tie the knot. The logic trap begins with one simple principle. Those who lie fear clarity. The manipulator's goal is to keep you emotional, because emotion blinds analysis. They'll provoke you with tone, insult, or drama, anything to drag you away from reason. The moment you lose logic, you lose power. So you must do what Socrates did. Anchor yourself in calm curiosity. Ask, don't attack. Observe, don't react. Their deception cannot survive under the weight of its own explanation. When someone manipulates, they rely on speed. They speak fast, mix truths with half-truths, and change subjects before your mind catches up. But when you slow the pace, their mask cracks. Ask, wait, can you explain what you mean by that? Then pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Silence is your ally. It forces their mind to work under pressure, and liars panic when logic enters the room. The Stoic doesn't argue to win. He questions to understand. Because understanding exposes motives. When you make a manipulator explain themselves, you reveal not just their reasoning, but their intent. You're not battling their words, you're dissecting their psychology. This makes you unpredictable, which terrifies them. You've shifted the game from emotion to reason, a field they can't dominate. Let's break this down like a philosopher would. Every manipulation has 3 layers. 1. Emotion, what they want you to feel. 2. Story, the narrative they build to justify it. 3. Intent, what they actually want from you. Most people react to the first layer. The Stoic targets the third. Logic is the scalpel that cuts through emotion and story until intent lies bare. Here's how it works. When someone says, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me," you don't defend yourself or argue your care. You respond, "Can you explain how doing that proves I care?" That single question reverses the power dynamic. Now they must justify the logic of their demand, something manipulators hate because their power depends on emotional blackmail, not reasoning.
Part 5, Segment 1. The Fire, Transforming Pain into Power. There is a point in every man's life when pain stops being just pain and becomes something else. A teacher, a sculptor, a forge. The Stoics called this point conversion through suffering. Not in a religious sense, but in the spiritual sense of a man finally seeing what pain truly is, not punishment, but purification. Pain is the universe's way of introducing you to yourself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The fire feeds on whatever is thrown into it. The weak see pain as destruction. The strong see it as fuel. The difference is not in what happens to you, but in how you interpret it. Every hardship, betrayal, heartbreak, or loss can either consume you or forge you, depending on what you do with the flames." Think about your own story. The moments that broke you, weren't they also the moments that forced you to grow? When you lost something, didn't you also lose your illusions? When someone betrayed you, didn't you also gain clarity about what loyalty truly means? Pain strips away what is unnecessary. It burns away pride, entitlement, and fantasy, until only the essential remains. Seneca said, "Fire tests gold, and adversity tests brave men." When you're in the fire, you don't need to escape it. You need to endure it long enough to let it shape you. The fire is not your enemy. It is your training. Every great man was once a broken man who learned to use his pain as discipline. The Stoics believed in a concept called amor fati, the love of fate. It means to not just accept what happens, but to love it. To say, let it happen, let it test me, let it refine me. Amor fati is not weakness, it is spiritual.
11. There's a quiet power in the man who no longer resists pain. He becomes still, patient, observant. The more the world tries to break him, the calmer he gets, because he knows that every trial, every insult, every loss is only refining his edge. The calm man cannot be broken. He can only be sharpened. When Marcus Aurelius lost his children, he didn't curse the gods. He wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." In his grief, he found grace. That's what the fire does. It doesn't erase your sorrow. It sanctifies it. It turns pain into wisdom, tears into compassion, endings into clarity. The Stoics taught that the universe is not cruel. It is precise. It gives you exactly what you need for your evolution. Pain, therefore, is not random. It is a message tailored for your soul. If you ignore it, it repeats. If you face it, it teaches. The moment you stop asking why me and start asking what now, you transcend. In modern life, pain takes new forms. The betrayal of a lover, the failure of a business, the collapse of a dream. Each burns in a different way, but the principle is the same. Transmute, don't transmit. Don't pass your pain to others through anger or self-pity. Use it as energy to grow beyond who you were before it hit you. The fire demands sacrifice. You cannot emerge reborn without letting go of the version of you that refuses to change. The man who clings to comfort dies a slow death. The man who surrenders to growth burns quickly but